The first time my mother introduced me as the help, I was only 11 years old. The last time she did it, she said it in front of the most powerful man my family had ever met, and less than 30 seconds later, he looked her straight in the eye and said something that changed my life forever. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 33 years old, and if you asked my parents who I was growing up, they wouldn't have said I was their daughter. They would have said I was useful. My older brother, Ryan, was the golden child. Everything he did was celebrated. If he got a B in school, Dad called the whole family to brag. When he joined the family construction business after college, my parents threw him a huge party. My younger sister, Olivia, was treated like a princess. Mom bought her expensive dresses, paid for dance lessons, and constantly reminded everyone how beautiful she was. Then there was me. I wasn't praised. I wasn't celebrated. I was expected. Expected to clean the kitchen after dinner. Expected to babysit Olivia. Expected to iron Dad's shirts. Expected to make Ryan breakfast because, according to Mom, he's busy building his future. Whenever relatives visited, Mom would smile proudly and say, "Claire loves taking care of people. She was born to serve." Everyone laughed. I laughed too. Not because it was funny. Because I learned very young that disagreeing only made things worse. When I was 16, I secretly entered a regional business competition at school. I spent months creating a proposal for an event planning company that specialized in luxury charity galas. I won first place. The prize included a scholarship and a chance to present my idea to local business owners. I ran home holding the trophy, expecting, just once, to make my parents proud. Dad barely looked up from the television. "That's nice." Ryan interrupted. "Can someone grab me another soda?" Mom pointed toward the kitchen. "Claire." I stood there holding my trophy. "I just got home." "So?" "Your brother asked first." That night I placed the trophy on my bedroom shelf. Nobody in my family ever mentioned it again. From that moment, I made myself a promise. If my family refused to see my worth, one day the rest of the world would. After college, I started my own event planning business. Not with family money. Not with investors. I worked mornings at a bakery, afternoons at a hotel, and evenings planning tiny birthday parties just to save enough money to rent a tiny office. There were weeks when I survived on instant noodles. There were months when I slept on a couch because paying rent mattered more than buying a bed. My parents knew I had a business. They simply refused to respect it. Dad loved telling people, "Claire decorates balloons." Ryan laughed every time. Olivia rolled her eyes. "Anyone can throw a party." I stopped correcting them. Instead, I focused on my clients. One satisfied customer became 3. 3 became 10. 10 became 50. Before long, my company was organizing luxury weddings, corporate launches, and charity galas for people whose names regularly appeared in magazines. I hired employees. Opened a larger office. Built a reputation. My family never asked a single question. Christmas Eve arrived just before my company's biggest year ever. Mom insisted everyone attend dinner. "Family comes first," she reminded us. Grandma quietly whispered over the phone, "Please come. I'd love to see you." I couldn't say no to Grandma. The moment I walked through my parents' front door, Mom looked relieved. "There you are." She handed me an apron. "The roast is almost done." I stared at it. "You want me to cook?" "Who else?" I glanced into the living room. Ryan was watching football. Olivia was showing vacation photos to our cousins. Dad was drinking coffee with Uncle Mark. Nobody else seemed busy. Still, I tied on the apron. Old habits are difficult to break. For the next hour, I carried food, refilled glasses, cleaned spills, and washed dishes while everyone else laughed together. Not one person offered to help. As I placed dessert on the table, Aunt Susan smiled kindly. Claire, come sit. Before I could move, Mom laughed. Oh, don't worry about her. Claire was born to serve. The room filled with polite laughter. Something inside me finally cracked. I quietly put the serving tray down. I'm actually a guest too. The room instantly fell silent. Mom's smile disappeared. Excuse me? I said. I'm your daughter. Not your waitress. Ryan chuckled. Someone's in a bad mood. Dad sighed. Claire, don't make tonight difficult. I looked around the room. Every face avoided mine. Even after everything I'd accomplished. They still saw the same little girl carrying trays. Without another word, I walked into the kitchen. My hands were shaking. Grandma followed a moment later. She gently hugged me. I've been waiting years for you to say that. Tears filled my eyes. I don't know why they can't just see me. She smiled sadly. They only see the version of you that's convenient. Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. Mom quickly wiped her hands. That must be Mr. Jonathan Pierce. Everyone immediately stood straighter. Even Ryan fixed his tie. Jonathan Pierce was one of the city's most respected philanthropists and CEOs. Dad had spent months hoping to win a multimillion-dollar construction contract with his foundation. Tonight's dinner wasn't just Christmas. It was networking. Dad rushed to greet him personally. The front door opened. A few seconds later, footsteps echoed toward the dining room. I stayed in the kitchen, drying my eyes. Then I heard a familiar voice. Claire? I froze. That voice couldn't be. I slowly turned around. Standing in the doorway was Jonathan Pierce. The same Jonathan Pierce whose foundation had hired my company to organize 3 record-breaking fundraising galas. The same client who had recommended me to executives across the country. His face immediately brightened. There you are. Without hesitation, he walked straight past my stunned parents, my brother, and every other guest. Then he smiled warmly and shook my hand with both of his. I've been hoping I'd see you tonight. The entire room went silent. Dad blinked. You know my daughter? Jonathan laughed. Know her? He looked genuinely surprised. Your daughter is the only event strategist I trust with our foundation's biggest projects. Ryan frowned. What? Jonathan continued smiling. The charity gala she planned last spring raised nearly $12 million. Mom slowly lowered the serving spoon she was holding. Dad looked completely confused. Jonathan glanced around the room before saying the words that made every single person stop breathing. I've worked with hundreds of professionals over the years. But your daughter is one of the most talented business leaders I've ever met. No one spoke. Not even me. Because I could already see the expressions on my parents' faces changing. For the first time in my life, they weren't looking at the daughter they called the help. They were looking at someone they had never truly bothered to know. For several long seconds, nobody in the room moved. My father kept staring at Jonathan Pierce as though he expected him to laugh and admit it was all some misunderstanding. Instead, Jonathan smiled at me. I hope you don't mind that I accepted your mother's invitation. When she mentioned your last name, I wondered if we were talking about the same Claire. I managed a small smile. I'm glad you came. Dad finally cleared his throat. Mr. Pierce, are you saying Claire works for your foundation? Jonathan chuckled. No. Claire doesn't work for us. Her company works with us. There was a huge difference. I watched my brother's confident smile slowly disappear. Jonathan continued, actually, we've been trying to convince Claire to sign a long-term national partnership. Ryan blinked. National? Jonathan nodded. 12 cities. We've interviewed dozens of event companies. None come close to hers. My mother looked at me as if she were seeing me for the first time. You never told us. I couldn't help smiling sadly. I tried. When? When I invited you to my office opening. You said you were busy. Mom looked down. I continued. When I won the State Hospitality Innovation Award. You said trophies don't pay bills. Dad's face turned red. And when my company was featured in Business Monthly. Ryan interrupted quietly. I thought that magazine interview was just a local advertisement. It wasn't. Jonathan answered before I could. It was a cover story. Then he added another sentence. I actually discovered Claire because of that article. The silence became almost unbearable. Trying to recover, Dad forced a smile. Well, we're certainly proud of her. I looked at him. Were you proud of me 20 minutes ago? He couldn't answer. Because 20 minutes earlier he'd watched me carry dirty dishes while Ryan relaxed on the couch. Jonathan slowly looked around the dining room. I'm confused. What do you mean? Dad asked. When I walked in. I assumed Claire was helping because she wanted to. He paused. But judging by everyone's reaction. That's not what was happening. Nobody spoke. Finally, Grandma sighed. They've treated her like unpaid staff since she was a child. Jonathan's smile disappeared. What? Grandma looked directly at him. They call her the help. The room became painfully quiet. Jonathan slowly turned toward my mother. Is that true? Mom's eyes filled with tears. It was only a joke. I quietly shook my head. No. It wasn't. I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply tired. 12-year-old me believed I existed to make everyone else's life easier. 16-year-old me cried herself to sleep because nobody cared that I won a business competition. I built an entire company. And none of you ever once asked how it was doing. Ryan looked uncomfortable. I didn't know. You never wanted to know. Those words hit him hard. Jonathan pulled out a chair and sat beside me. Claire. I've wanted to ask you something for weeks. I looked at him. What is it? Our board voted unanimously. He smiled. We'd like your company to become the exclusive event partner for our national foundation. I blinked. Exclusive? He nodded. It'll be the largest contract we've ever awarded. My hand started shaking. Are you serious? I wouldn't ask on Christmas Eve if I weren't. The room erupted with quiet gasps. Dad looked stunned. How large is the contract? Jonathan answered without hesitation. Roughly $18 million over the next 5 years. I almost dropped the glass I was holding. Not because of the money. Because it meant everything I'd worked for. Every sleepless night. Every sacrifice. Every lonely holiday spent building my dream. It had all led here. Then came the first unexpected twist. Ryan suddenly stood. He walked over to me. I owe you an apology. Everyone looked surprised. Including me. I spent years making fun of your business. I thought Dad was right. He swallowed hard. I was wrong. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't perfect. But it sounded sincere. Before I could answer, Olivia spoke. I wasn't much better. She looked ashamed. I always assumed Mom would be proud of you eventually. She started crying. I didn't realize how badly we were treating you. Then my mother quietly stood. She walked toward me with trembling hands. I've replayed tonight in my mind 100 times already. I don't like what I saw. Neither did I. She reached into a kitchen drawer. From inside, she pulled out the old white apron she'd handed me earlier. Without saying a word, she folded it, placed it on the table, and whispered, I'm done expecting you to wear this. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. For decades that apron represented my place in the family. Tonight, she was letting it go. Dad slowly stood too. I owe you more than an apology. I waited. When you were 18. You asked if I would loan you $5,000 to start your business. I remembered. He'd laughed. I told you event planning wasn't a real career. He nodded sadly. You were right. No. I answered softly. I wasn't right. I was determined. That difference mattered. Jonathan smiled proudly. That's exactly why we've trusted her. He looked around the room. Talent opens doors. Character keeps them open. Then came the biggest twist of the night. Jonathan reached into his briefcase. I actually brought something. He handed me a framed photograph. I stared at it. It was from our very first charity gala. I was standing in the background fixing floral arrangements while everyone else celebrated. Across the bottom, Jonathan had written by hand. The best leaders are the ones willing to serve, but never let anyone mistake service for weakness. My eyes filled with tears. He smiled. I thought you'd appreciate that. I do. More than he knew. Because my entire childhood, service had been used as a weapon against me. Jonathan had just transformed it into something completely different. As guests began leaving, several relatives stopped to hug me. One by one. I'm sorry. We should have spoken up. We're proud of you. Grandma stayed until everyone else was gone. Before leaving, she kissed my forehead. You finally stopped carrying everyone else's weight. I smiled. It feels lighter. 6 months later, my company signed the national partnership. We expanded into 4 new cities. Hired dozens of new employees. Opened a scholarship program for young women starting small businesses with no family support. At the opening ceremony, reporters asked why I created the scholarship. I smiled at the cameras. Because sometimes the people who believe in your dreams aren't the people who raised you. That interview went viral. A week later, my mother called. I watched it. I know. I'm proud of you. I closed my eyes. For years I'd wanted to hear those words. Strangely, they didn't carry the same power anymore. Because somewhere along the way, I had stopped needing my parents' approval to measure my worth. I appreciate that, Mom. And I meant it. Forgiveness didn't erase the past. But it allowed us to build something healthier. Slowly. Honestly. Christmas Eve became different after that. No one handed me an apron. No one called me the help. Instead, we all cooked together. Ryan washed dishes. Dad set the table. Olivia served dessert. And every year, my grandmother smiled when she saw it. People still ask if my parents really believed I was born to serve. The answer is yes. They just misunderstood what that meant. They thought serving meant staying small, staying quiet, and sacrificing myself for everyone else's comfort. My biggest client taught them something they'll never forget. True service isn't about being treated like a servant. It's about using your gifts to lift others while refusing to let anyone diminish your worth. That Christmas, the most important person who walked through my parents' front door didn't just hand me the biggest contract of my career. He handed me something far more valuable. A room full of witnesses who finally saw me, not as the help, but as the woman I had become all on my own.